I do have skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
All along was a dream. Course when I get in, threw my hands in the air and say, show me someday, yeah. She said, if you dare come and let me closer. Round and round and round and round we go. Go now, baby, now, baby, now, baby, now you know. I'm really sure how I'm feeling about it. Something in the way you move makes me feel like I can't live without you. You take me away. I want you to stay. I want you to stay. It's not much of a life you're living. It's not just something you take, it's given. Round and round and round and round we go. Now, baby, now, baby, now, baby, now, no. It's not much you're living. I'm really sure feeling about this song in the way you move. Makes me feel like I can't live without you. You take me all the way. I want you to stay. I want you to stay. I want you to stay. I want you to stay.
Something to be said about that being right underneath a Freemason statue. Just there with this Freemasonry regalia.
Yeah, it's Mark Hedges. Report it. He might be a butcher. Hey, do you have Snickers?
Yes. I'm under the impression that this is a map that you understand. That I imagine this is this map which you
Not
believe.
exactly, that's being argued too.
Do you believe
But
that's
it's a level
one?
plane, it's a level plane.
I don't require belief.
Sorry?
But it's not, I don't need belief.
So
Like,
wait,
you can believe in unicorns, is, you know,
Okay,
belief
right,
requires absent fact.
One minute. that's you're wearing that. So is that the one? Is that what you're under the impression that that's sort of?
I think that's more of a realistic representation of the Earth as it is, as opposed to the heliocentric theory. Yes.
Okay. So now, right now I understand. Now, originally I'm from London, and I take this sort of time-lapse photography as well.
Oh, cool. So do I. Yep.
The way that I would,
Star Trails.
yeah, that's right. So what I do is I point my camera towards the north, let my camera sit overnight, and I get these wonderful star trails around the North Pole. Now, also in January,
So you see Polaris. Yeah. In England, you'd see Polaris.
Yeah, that's right.
Not here. You only see about the curve, that part of Polaris, if you're facing north from where we are.
Right, but if I point the camera, as I have done, I point the camera north here, and I'm not seeing.
You won't see
anything
Polaris
like this.
because it's gone under your horizon view.
Sure. So, but rather than, I'm not seeing any complete circles. I'm seeing curvature, but I'm not seeing any complete circles. Now, in January, I went down to Blenheim.
Celestial Pole?
So I have done that.
Yep.
But you see, it spins around the other direction.
Yeah, cool. Well, when you think about it, Polaris is going that way, that's going that way. So they're all doing the same motion. You're changing your perspective of view. You're looking north and then you're looking south. So of course they're going to be going in opposite direction.
Because one minute. So once you're flat plane, does that rotate? You're saying the stars are turning.
And when you're doing your star trails,
Sure.
did you notice that all of these distances are the same? See how they're all the same? The length of distance over the time period that you're recording, the trail is the same. So if they're all different,
the orbital period of the world is constant. The stars aren't rotating at different speeds.
the Earth's orbit or motion has never been proven. They tried that with the Erie Sphalia and they failed. That's why it's called Erie Sphalia. And they failed. That's why it's called Erie Sphalia.
Okay, well,
The Erie Sphalia
I worked for Rocket
proved it.
Lab, and we launched
Okay.
a rocket yesterday. What's your take on that? As far as what do rockets do?
I go by practical experimentation, but as far as rockets, they go on a parabolic curve until they run out of fuel, and then they drop back down.
As in back into Earth.
Yeah, well, that's usually what goes up must come down.
That's who?
What do you mean, says who? If I throw something in the air, it's going to come back down again because the mass and density of the object that I'm throwing up is heavier than the air or the medium that it's in supporting it, so it's going to drop.
Right. Unfortunately, I have somewhere to be, but so we launched this rocket yesterday. I studied aerospace engineering.
Sure.
That makes me a rocket scientist. So the way that rockets actually work, now you're right in the sense that if I throw something up, it's going to come back down
Goes
again.
up, must come down, law of gravity.
But for not the reasons that you're saying.
Okay.
So if I throw something up very high, it's going to come straight back down because the Earth, the gravity of Earth, so very large things with very large mass.
Gravity always makes me smile, but carry on.
So there's the graviton exchange particle that acts between things which have mass. The graviton exchange particle that acts between things which have mass, and that exerts the gravitational force between things. There's a gravitational equation that works very well, and for any celestial body that we've been to, holds true. So what happens is that's always pulling it down towards Earth, regardless of where you are.
Yeah. Have you got any first-hand practical knowledge of these things you're talking about?
Sure, I put on cameras onto the spacecraft that went up yesterday.
Okay, so
Just one moment.
sorry, carry on.
Sure.
Yep, sorry.
So what we do is that now I know it looks pretty confusing that it appears as though the rockets we fly go upwards, which is what happens for a fair bit of time.
Yeah.
But that's not really what the whole thing, the whole story. So the reason why rockets are going up is that we have
They're being propelled.
very dense atmosphere. largely below 100 kilometers, but also it's still pretty thick beyond there. But effectively, the reason why we're going upwards is to get beyond the atmosphere.
To break free. Yeah.
What do you mean to break free?
Well, to break free of the atmosphere, to break free of the area behind it. Well, it's always been taught that you're breaking free of gravity.
The ionosphere spreads out
And then there's
many
the
hundreds
sphere and all this
hundreds of kilometers. But the main thing that we're trying to do is that by being in an atmosphere, it's a retarding force against us. So when you're driving the car, if you let go of the accelerator,
course,
as you're smashing into the air, it's taking energy out of the system, it's slowing you down.
kinetic energy.
Whereas when we're putting ourselves into an orbit, it's great if we can go to an orbital speed close to the surface, but we're going to heat up very quickly due to atmospheric heating, and we're going to slow down very quickly. So
how did the satellites get on? If they're made out of aluminium and stuff, why aren't they melting in the thermosphere?
that's a great idea. So the reason is that when we get to orbital velocity, about 5 kilometers per second, but it's not as though we're going 0 to 5 kilometers per second, and definitely not
accelerating.
Yes. And so things do burn up when they re-enter because they're going that quickly when they're coming into the atmosphere. Whereas when we're going up, we're not actually getting to that speed when we're going through the atmosphere. You should be going to
In a medium, so you should be accelerating.
Yeah. So if I'm let's say I'm currently in a swimming pool and I'm trying
Jump
to
out
go,
into the air, you can move a lot faster than
yeah,
a swimming
exactly.
pool.
So what I'm going to do, if I want to go, if my swimming pool is like here, and I'm trying to get there, then I'm not going to swim across this way. I'm just going to swim this bit, and then I'm going to run along the ground to get there.
Exactly.
So that's
The
why
shortest
my
distance through the
rocket
densest
is
medium.
going up through as much through the atmosphere as possible. Admittedly, I am starting to put it on a parabolic curve, and then what's happening? What I'm going to do is that most of the propellant that I'm burning is to go sideways. I want to go sideways as fast as I can.
So you can keep up with the rotation supposedly of the Earth and
Not the rotation. It doesn't matter how fast the world is rotating. It doesn't need to be rotating.
Okay.
What I want to be doing is
doesn't
that
need to be rotating. Okay.
Nope. What I need to, because the world is flat. Because the world is flat. Because the world is flat.
Gotcha.
Because the world is round. Because the world is round. I need to be going
Spherical.
I need to be going.
A place is round.
I'm taking a plane because the orbit is on a particular plane. Because the orbit is on a particular plane. But effectively, let's say we just went up, we're coming straight back down. If we go sideways a bit, then it means that our path is going to go a bit sideways before it comes back down again. If I go so far sideways, then that means that as the world is going round, I'm falling at I'm moving at the same as it's going round, and that causes me to go into this circular path again and again and again.
So what's keeping you up at that altitude?
We're in a if you unfortunately I can't carry it to my Sabbath, but if you were to take your camera and you were to spin it round, it's going to keep itself it's going to keep itself at that distance. We have a force exerting us, and that's due to the force you've initially given it. Yeah, it's a centripetal force that we're at. So we're so there's nothing that's going to be retarding that velocity that you've given it. Sorry, there is going to be something that's retarding that, and that is the very thin amount of atmosphere that's still there. So that's why the satellites that we send up, it is going to deorbit in a number of years. But the higher you're in, the longer it's going to stay up there for. But yeah, that's orbit. And I was able to. Now, admittedly, I'm not an astronaut, so I haven't seen it firsthand. But I did put on the cameras into the spacecraft that we sent up, and we were able to see the curvature of the world as it goes around. It's really something amazing to see.
They've taken footage from roughly, I think it was 70 miles up. No curvature detected.
Is this something which have you done a high altitude balloon project, or is
I haven't myself, but I've seen many amateur high altitude balloon
Why do you
projects.
trust that any more than any other sort of space program? Why do you get the credence?
The bigger the program, the more they have to lose.
What do they have to lose?
Funding.
From who?
NASA's getting a shitload of money each year.
Look at
aren't
them
they?
as a private organisation. Where do we think we get our money from?
I don't know.
I'm not sure about the private side of things, but I'm just going by NASA.
Well, NASA's getting their funding each year from the government. So they've got a lot to lose if they're proven to be all bullshit.
Like you think we've been
Right,
been
but
to the moon?
obviously
no,
that's
sure.
one. I know they were to the moon. The retroflectors left on Apollo 17.
The moon's a giant reflector regardless. You don't need light. You don't need.
Wait 1 second. How do you think the lunar phases work?
how do I don't know, to be quite honest, how lunar phases work,
But
but
it
I
makes-
think it's depending
On where the sun is in its orbit above the Earth versus where the moon is on its orbit above the Earth.
Orbit above the Earth. We're probably going to have to speak around that in a bit.
Because
But just
you're thinking that the sun's 93 million miles away and 400 times greater than the Earth's diameter. I'm
Yeah,
thinking the
so-
sun's a small localized light that's orbiting
why is it
above the
hanging
Earth.
above the Earth?
I don't know why it's hanging there or what
What's
it
the
is,
proof behind
what
that
it's even made
idea?
of. But I know that from the looking at high altitude balloon photos, and you see the sun, and you see the sun leaving a hot spot on the clouds below it, that can only happen with a close localized light. You wouldn't get crepuscular clouds if the sun was giving us parallel
I'm
lights.
not sure. I'm not
Crepuscular
sure.
clouds, you see the sun rays coming through the clouds and they all come out in a triangular fashion. You know what I mean? You see the sun rays, they call them fingers of God or whatever you want to call them, but you know, you see.
You can
there's
totally do that. If you ever got,
there are many
if you ever
photos
cut
of
a piece
crepuscular
card,
clouds.
If you ever cut a card, just a slit, and then seen a ray of light shine out of it.
It'll sprawl out.
You can get a pretty straight line out of a slit.
Again, there are other people that have done those tests. I haven't done those myself, so I can't speak from
Why don't
first
you?
hand.
If you're going to be as committed to company,
I've done my line of sight tests. I've done many star trails and time lapse photographies of the South Celestial Point where I live out at Waimaku. But no satellites.
so you But why aren't you expecting to see a different thing when you point your camera north when you point your camera south? Because it would make no sense if you're.
I've filmed northward and southward, true north and true south, not magnetic north and magnetic south. And I've got
The South Celestial point bang on in the centre of my camera's shot, and I've got the clock face going around of the crux and the pointer stars, Hagel, Rigel, Kent, all of those going around in their clockwise position, but they slowly degrade over the year because they work backwards over the year's cycle. But my point is there's no parallax in the stars, and these here all being the same distance, if the stars are all different locations from each other, you would expect to see parallax in the stars over long time exposures.
No, I think your interpretation of that is incorrect, because my understanding is that the orbital, the period it takes for them to go around there, that's just because the world is rotating. So you're expecting
that's the period of the exposure of the camera that's making those lines. If I film for only 30 minutes,
I'm saying if you've done if you're at the North Pole or the South Pole for that matter, then it would be feasible for you to get an entire loop at the sidereal day.
yeah, sure. If you're not got any daylight killing the stars, if you're in darkness 24 hours, yes.
Which you're capable to do if you were to
I've
get
done
to
it
this.
every 3 months, and I'll get a quarter of the rotation each.
and I can end up putting them all together and having a full 360 of the South Celestial Pole's rotation. So that's not a problem, but
My point is, when I film directly south, and this is filming at a 37 degrees
from horizontal, so that's where the South Celestial point is, because we're at about 36 longitude.
Something like that, yeah.
So that's why I go 36 up from horizontal, and then I've found true north by just trial and error with the camera until I get the spot in the centre. So that way I know I'm looking on 30 degrees of all of the stars' rotations from the South Celestial point. When I'm filming north, I'll only see that bit because Polaris is below my viewable perception. It's out of my range of view, so I'm not going to see Polaris.
So,
if I was
what
to
I'd
go
really
towards
recommend-
Indonesia or more towards the equatorial plane, then I would see more of Polaris, but I'd see less of the South Celestial rotation.
So I think an important
This is what I've done
experiment for
my
you
own
to do.
use. Yep.
Yeah, I think an important experiment is rather than facing your camera now at different angles, just to do it straight upwards.
Oh,
But
straight
it's
to Guinness.
straight upward? No. So yeah, from
90
as in,
degrees.
As in, yeah, but we want it perpendicular, parallel with the ground, just facing directly upwards, and to go as far as you're
I've done that.
comfortable to travel north and south, and actually see the changing curvatures based on where you're up to.
Oh,
in the
sure.
sense that
And
you're
the
going to see things
celestial
curve-
equator changes over the times in the year. I mean, sometimes it's higher up, the celestial, where Orion, the belt's always, the 3 stars always go in a perfectly straight line because they're in that celestial equator. So they're always going, but sometimes they might be at about 80 degrees, sometimes they might be at about 50 degrees, depending on the time of year, whether it's spring, summer, winter.
Because obviously the sun is doing its orbit closer to north in our winter time, and that sun's doing its orbit above us more. It's higher in the sky.
Yeah, looks like I'm late.
You're supporting it, for Christ's sakes! Come on! Thank you, mate.
So 1 second. So what is down to you? Why are things going down?
Any item will go down until it meets another
What's
mass
down? What's down?
towards the earth,
And
towards the ground.
why
surface.
towards the ground?
Because upward is full of air, and so a solid object is always going to go in a motion until it hits another
No,
object.
but what's
and comes to
special
a
about the
standstill.
ground? Why can't I go sideways?
Because it's solid.
Okay,
we can go
the side of
sideways.
The wall is solid. Well, I'm not
We
getting
can go
attracted to it.
sideways.
I mean, I am getting attracted to it, but far marginally compared to the centre of Earth.
Okay.
But why aren't I going sideways compared to down?
Because we're not moving sideways.
No.
If I drop something, it's going to go
straight.
straight down, yeah?
Yeah,
It's not going to go straight across.
Yeah, but why?
'Cause there's no
why-
lateral
yes,
movement.
okay. Right, but currently I'm flat against the ground. I can
Yep.
still feel the Earth exerting a force on me, which is pulling me further down to the ground. But
You
you're
can
saying
feel your weight on your feet.
I'm being pulled to the ground.
Are you?
Yeah, 100%. I can feel, and but by extension of
The
that,
Earth's inertia and gravitational force pulling me towards the centre of the Earth.
and the way that I feel that is it's the weight of my body is going down, the interface between my body and the ground is through my feet, and there is a force of, depending on how much unhealthy food I've been eating, it's roughly 70 times 9.81. That's going to go down, and I have a same reactional force because I am against a solid surface, and that's being pushed up against me by the ground onto me.
So what's pushing the ground up?
That's the reaction. What's called the reaction force.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that the ground is moving up towards your feet
No, I'm not saying it's moving. You can have forces without things moving.
without motion?
That's correct. I said that building, it's holding itself, even though there is forces interacting between every single one of those elements.
Yeah. Okay.
Forces can be
I think I
balanced
grasp what you
without
mean.
motion.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. I'm not a rocket scientist.
Newton's third law. Every
So
action
you
has
think like
absolute
you see the side cuts of the plane where we've got a crust and a mantle, and you think that's all real?
Well, that's speculation because no one's been to the centre of Earth.
Yeah. Do you know how far we've actually drilled in?
I don't care. how far
Russia,
we're drilling.
12k. That's
What do you mean?
the deepest they've dug. 12
That's-
miles in.
Is that related to this, or you're just saying?
Yeah,
right?
the koala mine, the Russian mine, they went for about 15 years. In the last 2.5 years, they only got an extra 100 or 200 centimetres depth.
Is that related to this, or you're just saying as?
Well, it's just saying if we're on a ball
Yeah.
and we've got this iron core and a mantle and crust,
It's really
because
hot.
like you
It's
say,
going to be really difficult for us to go any closer. The fact of the matter is, in 12 kilometers is really nothing in the grand scheme.
yeah,
of things.
yeah, it's just a
terms of-
speck.
But
So
I
that's
don't
as far as
understand how
we've
that
dug.
comes. I don't understand how this comes into the gravity.
Because it doesn't support the fact that if, well, more to the point, it shows that as you've said, no one knows because no one's verified or
But that
dug
doesn't
deep
help with the
enough.
gravity discussion.
Oh, no, of
I
course
know
not.
that anything which has mass has the ability to exert gravity on it.
So how come
Depending
the
on-
moon doesn't crash into us then?
Absolutely, because it's much like the satellites that we send up. The moon is also in orbit around the Earth.
Okay, so because its own force is keeping it away and towards it at the same time, it's found its equilibrium and sustained that distance, or
so
it's
if-
got. I
if
know
you-
we have
if you-
supermoons because it's closer sometimes. So is there like a distance that it travels from and to? You know,
So if you,
you know what I
if
mean?
you were to just kill the orbital velocity of the moon, then yeah, it's going to come straight back and crash into Earth.
Okay.
Because we've given it that. Because it has a orbital velocity, then it's doing much the same thing our satellites are doing, and
So you're
it's-
saying the moon is orbiting around the Earth, not above it?
we don't know about that. As in,
Well, like I say, the sun and the moon are orbiting above the Earth, the flat Earth. You're more the moon, and the moon is orbiting around the sphere.
it's tidally locked, and you're
Tidally locked. Yeah, so it has effect on water.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right.
So that's an orbit around. It means we're orbit around Earth.
But just trying to make sure we're on the same page.
Earth is an orbit around the sun.
Sure. Okay. Wow. You've given me a huge amount to think about and some good ideas to go and try.
You know, and
mate, I appreciate it.
I really
do.
dislike it that there are people out there who are trying to shit on like flat earthers when there's a good science behind it, and people just saying, well, you know what, my teachers didn't do a good enough job. I'm challenging this. What is a common belief? And I think that should be done. And
To
I
me,
power to you
condemnation
for
without investigation is the height of ignorance.
100%.
And most people are quite happy just to keep their heads in the
Yeah.
ground and accept the reality in which they're presented.
Totally, and I give power to you for continue doing experiments, and would me and some of my colleagues be would we be allowed
You
to go?
would be absolutely.
Would
well-
we have to pay if we were to go?
I don't know. We're putting up a debate between flat earthers and globe earthers. So if you wanted to come along,
Interesting. Would we have to? Because I think it would be a hard sell for me to tell my colleagues that go to this conference and we've got to
okay.
pay for it. But
again, Adrian actually wants to get it because she's the lady that's organised it all with Novotel.
Sure.
She's the one hosting it all. I'm just here to give her some support.
because if you were really interested in getting to the bottom of things, getting some proof that you are happy with,
Yeah.
I could totally get some. I think it's likely I could put some.
Sure.
Have some people who show up.
Or at least
And-
other information out there, because the main problem we're having is that there's nobody else, so to speak, on the globe side of things that wants to even
Really?
broach it.
Interesting.
They just say, "Oh, you're bullshit," and that's it. But
that's-
we're saying, well,
that's-
if you
because
think
it's-
if you think you're in a heliocentric theory, then show us your evidence
Totally.
of it, because
that's-
we'll accept evidence, you know, or proofs. But I think the best bet is to perhaps
I
shoot
mean,
down and get a hold
I'll be
of
able to
Adrian.
look online.
But I would say,
because if I wouldn't be able to get any of my colleagues to go if they were going to have to pay for it, because they were like they will literally say.
I'm
as you
pretty
said,
sure
it's a
if you wanted to
money-making
come
scheme.
along and be part of the debate and stuff, I'm sure she won't have an issue in the world with you coming
Really?
along. There's like 3 different parts to the expo. There's the international speakers and stuff coming over, which is during the daytime on Saturday. Then we're having a dinner from 6:30 through to 11:30, I think, which is like the smorgasbord part. And then the next day, there's also another 4 or 5 hours worth. So
Gotcha. I
it's
won't be able to
broken
make it on the Saturday. That's my Sabbath. But yeah, I mean,
out. Well, Sunday.
could do it on the Sunday. Tell me, is your ultimate? I'm surprised you haven't said this already, but is the ultimate goal really to get a truth that you're happy with?
Yeah. So that's all we're basically looking for is a bit of truth instead of black and skeptics and
Sure.
ridicule. We're just if it is what it says it is, then someone from that part of the world or from that way of thinking show us.
Yeah.
And they just don't show up. And it's not like we ridicule them on their thoughts. So like, I'm not sitting there, oh my God, you think we're spinning? You know, it's not like I take the shit out of you, like we get it back at us. We're all open for an adult, respectable debate, I suppose, is the best way of putting it.
So yeah,
Do you want to leave me your number, or can I give you my number? Or
you're going to be on the website for the expo.
if you just go fexponz.co.nz.
Sorry, I can't actually take anything today.
Okay.
In my Sabbath, I can't carry anything, but I definitely recognise that and know what to search.
Yeah.
And,
Flat Earth Expo, that'll come up.
Gotcha. Okay,
All
it's very
right.
nice to meet you.
Appreciate your time, mate. Have a good day, mate. Thank you.
Load it, cock it, let it go.